Hello, everyone. So today we have a stock market update. So I'm going to switch the screen over to that, and then just to give you a heads up, I will be talking a little bit about my game in the next section after this, where I will be discussing why I think TensorFlow is going to be put on the back burner a little bit. But we'll get to that in a second. Today we have the stock market up here. First off, I'll just mention that I want to thank you guys for participation. After last week's stock market update, we had a significant increase in participation in the voting poll. I guess you could say it was uh, it wouldn't be a 400% increase. It would be more of a 330. I'm not sure about the numbers, but we had 3 votes previously, and this time we had 8. So it's a pretty big jump. But you can see the scoreboard we have up here. Mike has been added to the scoreboard with his large investment in yellow, and we will be seeing how his investment has played out in today's stock market fluctuation. So I'm just going to get straight to the point. We had 8 votes, which means that the percentages will be a little bit different from what we had in the previous stock market updates. So I'm going to start out with red. Red had a percentage of 12. Yellow, uh, going right along with Mike's investment, had a value of 37. Green and blue both shared a value of 25% of the vote. So at the moment, it will seem like everything is going up, but that's because we have a market factor of 0, which isn't the true situation right here. It can be, but we will see. So I'm going to put my calculator up to the camera here and hit enter. You see, is that a 10? It's an 18. Sorry. Oh, that would have been an amazing day in the market if it was a 10. So we have an 18. So you can see that everything except for red has increased, which means that this is once again a very good day in the market, judging by the green color. Now, if this were 10, red would have also increased, but you know, if we keep getting good days in the market like this, it's gonna seem like something's wrong here. But I promise you, this is a perfectly well, it's a pseudo random number generator, but it's as random as we're gonna get, and it should be not favoring any particular kind of day. So at the moment, we're being pretty lucky with our market values in general. So I'm gonna hit new market here, zero out the value, and we can see that red has decreased, yellow has increased, green has increased, and blue has increased. Although blue and green have not increased as much as yellow has. So we will go check the scoreboard, and you can see that Mike has had a slight jump in his value, which means that we should probably resort this. Megan doesn't seem like she's moved that much in value due to the fact that she had blue as her main investment. Now, my portfolio with a slightly more diverse set of stock has increased, I want to say about 10,000 Janos, but that's not too significant considering that we're playing in the 100,000s. But my sister is still climbing, but it seems that even Steven has gained a little bit of ground on her value, as opposed to being relatively close to her passing him. So we're going to just select this and sort it from largest to smallest, and you can see that Mike has jumped over Boring Boris, a very uh, a very respectful feat of stock marketing, if that's a correct verb. Now, it is interesting that we have almost a triangle, other than Megan up here, of values left, but that's completely coincidental. Um, I guess you could probably consider some correlation between how much money has been spent and how much money has been earned, but even Steven is still doing pretty well, which means the market in general is doing fairly well. That is our S&P 500, and so we are going to go. This is actually week 8, and we will put in our stock values. So yellow is up to 127, I believe. 135 and 262. 135, 262. And we will be updating this graph here. You can see that blue has slowed its climb slightly. Yellow is continuing its spastic climb, although we might be able to see somewhat of a trend here with an upwards trend if you were to fit that graph. And red is continuing its slope on a downwards scale. Green still being fairly consistent at its price, but is relatively higher than its beginning price. So people who invested early in green are sitting pretty well with that stock. But as we can see, it has not been showing any signs of growth in the past few weeks. That might change depending on who's watching the stream and who wants to be voting in the poll. At this point, I'd like to mention, if you want to go up in the corner of this video at the moment, or if you're watching the stream live, you can still do that. Up in the corner, I have created a poll that you can vote in to help the stock fluctuate. So you can vote for the stock that you wish to support. So these are, once again, the stock values and percentage, the proportions that people have put their money into. Some people, like Mike and my girlfriend Megan, have decided to only spend half of their money, probably through ideas of spending more at a later time. But I, at the moment, have spent a majority of my money, only having 6 Jonos left over. So looking at the historic data, we can see that yellow is at an all-time high in value, and blue, once again, is also at an all-time high, but is seeming to show somewhat of a peak. That does sort of seem to show that there's a possibility of a drop in the future, but we can't see too much of that going on, so it's hard to make any judgments on that. I am considering whether I want to sell out of some of my stock and reinvest, but I guess the one thing is that red is a really cheap buy right now, so that is an interesting thing to consider. But at the same time, it has been constantly going down, and it would require some support from the fan base to we'd need to get the red people out of their holes to come support this. I hope that's not crossing any boundaries by saying that. But I think what I'm going to do, seeing that blue is starting to show somewhat of a peak and like a hump there, I think I'm going to sell out of some of my blue. So I'm going to sell out of half of my blue stock at the moment. So I have a total amount. I'm going to sell 250 stock. That is at a value of 262, and that comes out to 65,500 as the value I now have in my bank. So if I bring this down, keep an eye on the value I have for my total assets. That should stay the same if I do this correctly. So if I lower this to 250 and I change this to 65506, this number should be the same that it was, and it does seem to be that way. Now, I do have a lot of red, but as you can see, that has been losing me money. But currently, red is at the lowest value any stock has been, even lower than blue's low in the beginning when everybody seemed to buy into that. So, this is yellow's low. No, blue has been lower. But then when blue hit a low, we did see a pretty big spike in its value. So I'm going to be investing in red. I will see how much I can invest with the current balance that I have. So if the stock value is 55, let's say 65506 divided by 55 is 1,191. I'm not going to spend all of my money on red just because it does have a pretty low trend. Let's let's bring that value that I currently have up to an even 1000 stock. So 1000 minus 365, I could probably do this in my head, but I have a calculator, so it's probably quicker to do it that way. So I am buying 635 red stock, so that's times 55 is 34,925 Jonos. So I'm going to be subtracting that from the current total balance that I have, minus that value, and the value that I have now is, keep an eye on the total assets so that it doesn't change, 1,000, and we're going to bring this number to 30581. And you can see the total assets value has not changed, but I now have 1,000 stock in red. Now, this does sort of change my allegiances in a sense. So I am sticking with yellow just because we do have a relatively celebrity support here, I guess. And I think that yellow will continue to prosper with that in mind. And I do have a lot in yellow, but I am going out of blue just because I'm a little scared of this trajectory here. So I do have a little bit left in investments in there, and green is I'm wondering if green is up from when I bought it. I don't think it is. I think I bought green when it was 155, so I'm gonna wait until I at least break even on that to sell out. But I don't have many stock in green, so there isn't much that's being done in terms of changing the values there. So this has been the stock market update. I'm going to save the stock market as it is. We're going to be transitioning to the second portion of this. Sorry, my phone is going crazy over here. The second portion where we will be talking about the game I'm working on. So I'm going to switch the screen here, and we will get into that. So you can see down in the corner here, I have my game Sell Me Something. Now, I talked a little bit about this in the previous stream about how I planned to implement TensorFlow as a enemy in the game so that the enemy would learn how to chase the player when it encounters the player. Now, I'm going to be talking a little bit about why I think I need to take a different approach to that than I originally thought. But first, I'm just going to showcase what I have done as improvements here. So you can see that the character is breathing. We can do our normal animation that we had when we were running, and you can see the character is still breathing. That's an improvement because I had a problem with that, but I ended up fixing it. So one new improvement is that I have added animation for all directions, and you can see there is still a breathing animation when we stop in any direction. I have also added a sprint feature holding the shift button, and you can see now that there are boxes here. What's interesting, and I'm wondering now, we don't have any in this, so we do have some in this direction, but there is actually a problem when you can see that the character runs to the side of the screen, which is coded in correctly. So that's what I want to happen, but there is some problems with the relative nature of printing boxes to the screen, of getting boxes to print while the character is in this state of positioning. So you can see that up here in the corner, we have movement, and the screen itself isn't really moving. It's the character that's moving. But as we reach the middle of the screen, we will see that the character seems to lock into a position, and it is no longer the character that's moving, but instead the screen. So you can kind of see some errors with how the screen is presented up there, and I'm wondering, there you go, you can see that as it gets further away from the character, the boxes that are over half a distance of the screen's width away from the character disappear. Now, this is something that I have told the computer to do because it makes sense in the circumstances we are in currently, where the character is in the middle of the screen. But in the states where the character is towards the edge of the environment, and the character is moving to the edge of the screen, you can see that the entire screen disappears at that point. So there's some glitches I'm working out. There's also a movement glitch. I'm going to see if we can get it to pop up. It'll probably pop up at some point if I'm just screwing around here. But it's something where the character will lock into a position and it thinks that you're still pressing one of the keys. Now, I think this might be a Pygame problem, but the reason for that is because it is thinking that there is an event happening that is equal to a key down. And it never, either that or it never receives the key up event. And what I've done is I've added in a feature where if you hit any key that just does nothing, then it will zero out all of the velocities, so we're not moving in any weird directions. So you can see that you can move in diagonals, and it'll just kind of pick one of the animations to go with that has to do with those directions. And so I don't know, I might play around with that because it might be favorable to have the downwards animations in those circumstances. I'm not sure. This is going to be something that I'm going to have to play around with. I might even have to add in diagonal animations, but who knows. This is something where I'm drawing all of the pictures and animation in Paint. So this is all up to me what the animation is. There's no limitations on how this goes. It shouldn't really be a limitation on processing power of having more complexity to the animation. So what I can do is in these downwards and upwards animations, there's actually 6 frames, and in the sideways animations, there's only 4. And you can see that there's a pretty visible difference in the frame rate, I guess, of the animation. This seems a lot smoother, and even in the running circumstance, it does seem a lot smoother to have those transition frames. But it's all things I'm playing around with, and I would love to hear your input on them. So if you have any questions or suggestions on the game, please leave those in the chat. Now, let's get to the AI talk. So originally, I had thought about implementing TensorFlow as the main enemy in this game. And I still want to stay within the realm of AI and keep the original idea of this game at the core. But I think at the moment, I won't be able to implement TensorFlow immediately. Now, there's a very big reason for this, and it's something that is definitely a benefit in a lot of programs that TensorFlow is involved with, but in this particular program, it is not. And the reason for that is frame rate. Now, one thing I should introduce before I get into this that might actually help out is that I've added music to this game. Now, I will be playing this music. It might be a little loud on your end. I'm not sure. It seems like it's pretty loud in the audio, but I can't really mess around with the volume too much. So here we go. And so you might be thinking that there's a pattern going here. There isn't. What's actually happening is I have the base Windows sound producing module running here, and I have picked a frequency that starts on the note A and goes through the A minor scale randomly. So it picks a number between 0 and 12, multiplies it by a factor that moves it relatively close to through the A minor scale. It does get a little bit further and further off as the number multiplied gets higher. But what I think that adds to the fact that it sounds a little creepy here. So I picked a minor scale because minor scales tend to be a little bit more unnerving, or the emotion kind of fits the game. But as it gets further off key, it's a little bit more of rattling, I guess. And so what I'm going to do is, oh, here we go. Here's the problem where, see, my hands are not on the keyboard and it's running, but I can hit a key and it will stop that because I've implemented the fix, I guess. It's more of a workaround. But so I think that as it gets further off, it does sound a little bit better. And this is something you can toggle on and off. So now it's off, and I can toggle it back on just by hitting the M button. It's just something that I put in so that I didn't have to listen to it while I was testing things. But what I plan to do is when I implement the enemy, have a proximity value of how close the enemy is to you. and that proximity value actually changes how fast these notes are played and what frequency they are played at. So it will be more likely to play a higher frequency when the the monster is close to you, and it will be a lot faster, sort of like beep 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 beep, beep, and it will just try. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something simple that will still get the point across that something's chasing you and you should probably run away. But we have the sprint feature added in here, so we have that to work with, and I think that this game, it has a lot of potential. One thing I do plan to be working on in the near future is collisions. You can see that you can just kind of go through these boxes and it's in front of you. I'm debating whether I want to add priority, where if you're behind the box, it's in front of you, and if you're in front of the box, then it's behind you. But that's going to be a little bit more complex, and I could always easily change this to be just a rectangular obstruction, because this is a two-dimensional situation. So it's a little interesting because I'd have to go with a parallelogram of blocking people as to not be cheating, really, because if you're over here and you're in like this position right here, you should still be able to get there, but then you can't move any further. So it's something where I just have to add in equations, and it's not too difficult. It's just a little bit more thought-provoking. So I wanted to talk about the AI. I'm getting a little sidetracked here. So what the problem is with TensorFlow is it's too good at what it does. And the reason that it's good at what it does is because it doesn't do things in Python. So essentially what it does is with Python, because it's an interpreted language, Python goes and it reads a program line by line. It does each thing right after it reads it, and then it moves on to the next line. There might be some more intricate things going on in the background, because there are compiled Python and whatnot. But at a baseline, Python moves relatively slow compared to compiled languages like C, whereas C, once you have written the code, goes and compacts everything together into the most efficient thing that it can create with the set of instructions that you've given it. Now, what TensorFlow does is it collects all of the instructions from Python, and then it opens a session of TensorFlow, goes off, does all of the calculations and matrix manipulations, comes back, and then gives you an answer. And the problem with that is it's very fast, but it still takes time. And the problem with that in a circumstance where I'm trying to implement it into a game is that I cannot have TensorFlow go off and do all those calculations and then come back within the time that it takes to play a frame on the screen. This would cause problems where the character would just randomly pause midair and then come back down, and that although the calculations would not be going on while the enemy is chasing the character, this would still be somewhat annoying for a user. So what I hope to do is actually make a slower neural network. Now, I will see if I can still implement a convolutional neural network, because I think the benefit of a convolutional neural network is I can essentially give it the environment that the enemy is currently in, and it would be able to act as if that is a picture and pick out particular objects within that environment. Now, that would also be very beneficial in terms of identifying when there is a obstacle in front of you so that it can move around it. Now, as I said, I plan to implement that, but it might be a situation where I implement a less powerful neural network at first. And the reason that I have to do this by hand, or at least use a less notable neural network system than TensorFlow, is because I need the program to be doing each individual step of the process of using the neural network each frame. So as opposed to it doing an entire calculation between two frames, it will do maybe 1/100th of a calculation, and then in 100 frames, or perhaps I could set it up so that it goes the same speed even if I change the frame rate, where it would be only doing a certain amount of calculation every second, um, then by doing this, it would still, over time, have the same processing, but it would be slower. And I think this would be to the benefit of the user because with a convolutional neural network, it doesn't take many generations in order to make some associations that would create relatively accurate results. So this might be problematic because if the character, if the user does not gives enough information to the enemy on the first go around so that it can learn very quickly to catch the user on the next go around, then every single go around after that, the user will be caught and it won't be a fun game. It would just be a game of strategically avoiding the enemy so that it's never chasing you in the first place, which isn't really what I'm going for. Now, with a slower neural network, these associations would still be gained, but at the same time, it would be gaining more information as it goes, and the character would be able to change how it runs away as to throw a curveball to the neural network. Now, what I plan to do is still go off the basis of a convolutional neural network where there is a picture being given, which essentially would be an array of the values of probably mostly zeros, and then it would say there's an obstruction here, so that'd be like a 1, or maybe the character being there would probably be a 1. And then each obstruction, or perhaps each obstruction would be a different value, and then it could fill out basically a map of the environment with digits. And the way it can do that is by feeding it into a convolutional neural network. It would be able to pick out the individual features, and as the enemy approaches an object, it would be able to take a path that would avoid that object. So it's something interesting that I'm going to be playing around with, but that is the reason that I will not be implementing TensorFlow at the moment. Now, this is also because I am extremely new at using TensorFlow. So I'm not sure if there's any workarounds in order to make TensorFlow go slower or take things step by step. Now, if anyone does have suggestions for this, I'm just going to turn the music off for a second. If anyone does have suggestions of where I could learn the methods in order to achieve that, please send them my way, because I am definitely in the process of learning the system. I barely know what goes on, but then again, who does? TensorFlow is essentially black magic. So that's pretty much all I want to talk about with Sell Me Something, and I hope you enjoy the improvements I've made. I plan to be making improvements weekly here so that we have something to talk about on each of these midweek streams, but we are pushing on about 30 minutes, and I don't want this to drag on too long, so I will be signing off here. But don't forget that up in the corner, you can vote for your stock that you support. If you want to support Mike, you can vote for yellow, or if you want to support my bold choice of going with the underdog here, you can support red. And we will be seeing how that fluctuates in the week to come. This Saturday, I do plan to stream. I'm not sure what topic I plan to stream. I do have some suggestions that I've written down in my notes on my phone. But if you have any ideas that you'd like me to attempt to describe, or you think that's something I would be passionate about, feel free to leave those in the chat or in the comments if you're watching this later. And until then, I will see you later.